What is it about this president, President Barack Obama, that still, despite all even the current scandals that are going on, what is it that the secular media happens to be in love with here? Is it an ideology that he represents, or what is it?
It's absolutely an ideology he represents, and it's the idea that the personality, the racial makeup, everything is their ideal. They love this whole idea of a biracial, secular, liberal, someone they can say is the mainstream. They've tried very hard to invest us in the idea that Obama is the mainstream, that he's not ideological. They constantly run around and try to suggest he's the one that wants bipartisanship, that he's the one that wants to moderate between the two parties. This is Obama's gospel, as it were. I am here to bridge the divide, and they're not letting me. Now, obviously, anybody who's really paying attention to Obama's public remarks on a daily basis would find that hard to believe, that he has not been a uniter in any way. He has been a very divisive president. He's been a very partisan president. And I think all of the domestic scandals we're seeing right now suggest a president who is divisive, who is egotistical, who doesn't feel that ethics apply to him when it's about his place in history.
Well, here's one thing I can't figure out, and this goes to one of the current scandals right now, with regards to the tracking of the Associated Press reporter, but also Mr. Rosen at Fox News now, as we're finding out that he has been tracked. Now, the Fox News one, let's set that aside. The Associated Press, one of the more liberal organized news organizations out there, I would think, although their head has been on, the head of the AP has been on talking about how terrible this is, but I still read stories from Associated Press reporters that read more like public relations for President Barack Obama than they do a news story.
That's absolutely right. And let's put it this way. I would like the Associated Press to be an objective, detached news source. I wouldn't say that what I would expect from the AP, now that it's been revealed that they were being wiretapped, as a customer of Associated Press, I wouldn't want them to say, well, now we're going to go on a vindictive agenda and everything Obama does is mud. From a conservative perspective, that might be fun to read. But, you're exactly right, that AP for a long, long time here has been a press release service, not a wire service, but sort of a press release service for Obama. And so it is mystifying in that sense. And obviously, on some level, Obama doesn't fear that wiretapping the AP is going to hurt his press coverage. What they've tried to do, of course, on this scandal and on the IRS scandal, is to try to suggest Obama knew nothing, Obama had nothing to do with it, Obama was way above the fray. And as we know from the Bush administration, usually what the news media will do is to say, I have you either way. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, which is either you are evilly plotting to destroy me, or you're so stupid you're not paying any attention at all. You're either evil or incompetent. This is not a choice they're willing to do in this place. I mean, you can already see that the tenor of the coverage beginning to shift into the idea of the question that the pollsters now want to ask at the liberal news media is, are the Republicans going to overreach? This is precisely the kind of tactics they used in the Clinton administration so that they could change the subject from whether the Democrats had done something unethical to, well, Republicans are overdoing these questions about our ethics.
Tim, you called them almost like a press release party, but they're getting paid good money. Apparently, by reading one of your articles, it seems to release these pleasing stories, because a lot of the money that goes to some of these news outlets that are releasing positive stories, looking at the IRS Tea Party probe, several news agencies have come out and said that they're for the extra scrutiny for these conservative groups, including MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell. But when you follow the money trail, you look at liberal groups like MSNBC are getting large money from some of Obama's biggest supporters, including George Soros. Or if you look at some of the other payoffs politically, like to General Electric, who has its hand in the news agencies as well. So really, when you follow the money, it really doesn't surprise anybody that some of these positive stories are coming out.
Sure. Now, in this particular case now, NBC Universal that owns MSNBC is owned by Comcast.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not forget the Obama administration approved the merger of Comcast and NBC Universal. So there is a whole question there. And, of course, the lead Washington lobbyist for Comcast in Philadelphia had a massive fundraiser for Obama for his reelection. Those you can follow the money in some of those things and begin to question whether that corporate agenda, which people are going to generally assume that a corporate agenda is a right-wing capitalist agenda, and that's not always the case. That's not always good for business to be out of tune with the current administration. Certainly that's not the choice that Comcast has made here. But Comcast bought it from GE. So GE isn't in the news business as much. But, I mean, it's absolutely worth watching. Now, I don't think George Soros has donated to MSNBC, but I tell you where he's put a lot of his money. He put more than $1 million at National Public Radio. Mm-hmm. So National Public Radio suddenly gets extremely interested in ripping on Fox News or Rupert Murdoch. And then they say, well, that has nothing to do with the donations we're receiving. Come on. And if you go to npr.org, what you're going to see is a bunch of web ads for MSNBC shows. So MSNBC is actually funding NPR, and the whole thing reinforces itself.
What a wicked web of deception out there, some would describe it, I suppose. Do you think we are entering a time, though, Tim, and we're talking with Tim Graham, who is with the Media Research Center. He's the director of media analysis there. Do you think we are reaching a point where the level of trust in the NBCs, CBSs, ABCs is starting to diminish? People are catching on. Are you catching that in your analysis?
Oh, it's been diminishing for decades, yeah. I mean, if you look at the polls now, this is one of those funny things. The news media loves to tell you that the public approval rating of Congress is in the single digits, right, according to their poll. Well, of course, on some level, that's not the best measure, because what you really want to ask every individual voter is what they believe about their own member of Congress. But if that, let's say that rating's 9%, or at least one time it was 9%, so they love to throw that around. In the same poll, the public approval of TV news was at 21%. That's the number they're not going to tell you. And the fact of the matter is, for many years now, the public approval of the national news media has been on a dramatic decline. Okay, so we have become much more fragmented in the way that we receive information. Obviously, the ratings of these networks has gone from we were trying to do some of this math the other day, where the network evening newscast used to be watched by about 20% of the country. Now it's more like 7.5%. They are still the largest, the biggest dogs here in the news media. They're still the ones that can sort of call the tune or set the agenda. But their influence in terms of how many eyeballs they have on these shows, it just doesn't have the same impact as it used to. And that might explain on some level right now where they're all doing these polls saying, well, Obama's not suffering for these scandals. Well, on some level that might be. Here the news media is actually at least telling you that there's a scandal going on. People are busy watching Access Hollywood. They didn't catch it.
Tim, one of the examples that we have here in front of us that Media Research Center has put out on NBC's Today on Thursday, Savannah Guthrie was talking about some of these, and she said she was interviewing Chief White House Correspondent Chuck Todd, and she said, I read a headline yesterday that said Republicans see blood in the water, that they see a president who's very vulnerable politically. Is there a danger that they will overreach? And what he does is, Chuck Todd says, and if all of Congress is focusing on hearings with these scandals, the voters will punish them. We have 3 major scandals going on right now. 3, all at one time, just within the last couple of months. And what they're focusing on is not on the scandals, but on the backlash politically that will go against those investigating the scandals.
Exactly. And I think here's the thing that's important to note. Again, let's get out our civics textbooks. What we would believe, what we'd like to teach our children is that, well, the news media is there to hold the government accountable, to learn to get to the bottom of stories about how our government operates. And if it's not operating well, we want to know. No, what the news media is doing in the case that you just cited is the news media says, not only are we not going to really investigate this, we're going to demonize the members of Congress who decide to question further. Now, obviously, NBC News can call somebody and then people can hang up on them. a congressional committee can subpoena you and require you to appear. So they have more power to get to the bottom of things. But this is where the news media, just like they did in the Clinton administration, tries to demonize the Republicans for actually trying to hold hearings. Now, of course, in the Bush administration, when a Democratic congressman wanted to hold a hearing or a Democratic senator wanted to hold a hearing, well, this was democracy in action. This was the most patriotic Pledge of Allegiance moment. And that's what you have to look at this and say. It's a little sick that the news media, who's supposed to be holding the government accountable, is basically demonizing people from trying to hold government accountable. That's shameful. And, they're basically being anti-journalists. They're being partisan, activists trying to say, don't look over there, don't look behind the curtain.
Amazing. Tim Graham of the Media Research Center. We're glad you're there, man, taking care of things and keeping an eye on these folks. Hey, listen, do you have a website that people can go to and keep up on your research?
Well, we have mrc.org that's got our 26 years history archive. You could get buried in there. But our daily stuff is at newsbusters.org.
Newsbusters.org. We'll keep track of you.
Thank you.
All right. Tim Graham, the Director of Media Analysis at the Media Research Center, our guest over the last few minutes, and I can attest to it, Jeremy. Great organization.
Mm-hmm.
Glad they're there, keeping an eye, because you can't watch all the networks every night.
No.
They do that for you.
Yeah.
And keep you abreast of what's being said.
I love